This Fed Gov Today program is sponsored by HP. On this edition of Fed Gov Today with Francis Rose, an AI advantage to meet agency missions and a 100-page goal for the revolutionary FAR overhaul. One of the architects of the overhaul is here, Larry Allen of GSA, later in the program. Welcome to Fed Gov Today with Francis Rose. The General Services Administration says more than half of its employees are using the GSAI bot the agency created every day. It's only one of more than 2,000 use cases of AI across the federal government, according to the 2024 Federal Government Inventory. Rich Persinger is General Manager for Federal, Civilian, and Intelligence at HP. Rich, welcome. Thanks for joining me today. What are some of the more robust use cases that you've seen across the federal government for AI?
Well, there's certainly a lot of use cases, and I think that will continue to grow. I mean, if you think about citizen services and how the government's trying to digest the data and understand how to better support the citizens, that's one use case. Then you've got the ability to use AI to manage their environment. Think about it from an IT perspective, right? Understanding what's happening in their environment. Potentially, are there attacks or threats coming in at them? How are things running in terms of how to better efficiently utilize the technology? So the use cases are endless.
Is there a differentiation between the way agencies should think about using AI for frontline mission delivery tasks versus back office things that maybe the citizen that they work with or the constituent that they work with never really sees?
Well, again, I mean, the use cases are so many, and I think it's not just about providing better services using AI, but it's also about how to be more efficient as an enterprise. And back to the idea of the government trying to be efficient and save dollars today. AI will let them do that, and they'll do it in a way they've never been able to, at the same time be more efficient in everything that they do.
The connection that a lot of organizations are using are to those back office things like procurement and so
absolutely.
on. How do you expect to see AI impact things like procurement, like personnel management, things like that?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think AI will be able to go across everything that's out in the industry and understand what are the best of breed, right? What are the best of breed, not only solutions, but also prices, right? Mm-hmm. And how do we bring that back to the government so that they can better utilize the data and better procure things more efficiently? That's ultimately the goal right now.
How are you seeing business models change relative to the way things are changing, not just with AI, but more broadly across the landscape?
Well, yeah, you think about some of the initiatives the government has announced, right? And you'll talk to Larry Allen later who will go through some of that, but whether it's a large enterprise like HP or whether you're a small business, you certainly have to adjust your business model and think about your value proposition to the government and where you fit in. Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of anxiety amongst the small business community about those changes. I don't think there needs to be. I think there's plenty of opportunity for everybody as long as we adapt and we think about, again, how do we provide value to the government? They're certainly going to need our capabilities as they've gone through some changes. They've lost some resources and people, right? So they need us more than ever to help them implement these plans.
What's the role, do you think, of small business moving forward? Does that change, and does the way that a company like yours, the way that a company like that interacts with small businesses, uses them as subs, or in some cases maybe subs to the small business, what does that landscape look like, do you think?
Well, I mean, if you think about it in terms of the government in contracting, whether it's a large software company or an HP, we will need to use those small businesses because they have unique capabilities. They do have value add in terms of how they help the government ingest that capability, that solution, that IT. So we will be using them as part of our team. So maybe they're not the front end prime to the contracting process, but they will certainly be involved.
Mm-hmm. How do you go about identifying good partners that help you deliver those kinds of capabilities?
So back to the point of, are they focused on really what's their value prop? What's their business model, and how does that align to the government? If you do that, you will always be successful in the marketplace.
Mm-hmm. When you look at the landscape overall, how do you think it will look dramatically different, if at all, in the 12-month, the 24-month mark from now?
Well, certainly the number of procurements that go on across government may decrease, right? You may see less vehicles, and you'll see consolidation of that. So I think that's the biggest change we'll see. But again, I think that opens up other opportunities for small businesses, as an example, to change their model. Think about the services they want to provide because they have a unique position in the market. and not be as concerned about, as a small business, being on the front end and dealing with the liability that comes with a large federal contract.
We just have about 30 seconds left. What do you advise companies that are small businesses that want to do more business with a company like yours, or that just want to kind of spread their wings and fly in the federal space, to do to let people know about their capabilities?
Yeah. So 2 things. One, we do a lot of business with the small business community within the Fed market. That will continue. In terms of entering the Fed market or staying in the Fed market, you have to be very clear about what your business model is, and you have to be committed to the federal business market. One piece of advice I give anybody who's maybe on the private side of private sector and they want to come into federal, you have to either, you're in or out. You have to be committed to it. So that would be the key advice I'd give anybody.
Rich, it's great to have you here. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Francis.
You can read more about AI and the federal government on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. Up next, a 100-page goal for the revolutionary FAR overhaul. Fed Gov Today with Francis Rose continues in a moment. Join Defense Innovators August 27th through 29th in Washington, D.C. for the NDIA Emerging Technologies for Defense Conference, featuring top military leaders, classified briefings, and a new global defense hackathon. Register at ndiatechexpo.org. That's ndiatechexpo.org.
Innovation doesn't wait, and neither do we. At Maximus, we solve problems. Streamlining operations, delivering solutions at speed and scale that drive measurable results. From strategy to execution, we simplify complexity, building trust through expertise and innovative technology. Every service, every time. Efficient government delivered. We don't follow innovation, we drive it. Maximus.
Welcome back. The revolutionary FAR overhaul is underway to reform the federal acquisition regulation. The Office of Federal Procurement Policy and the FAR Council are leading the effort. One of the architects of the overhaul is Larry Allen. He's Associate Administrator for the Office of Government-Wide Policy at the General Services Administration. Larry, welcome. Thanks for joining me. Where have you come so far? Where are you today, and where are you headed on the FAR overhaul?
Francis, one of the things I'm proudest of with this revolutionary FAR overhaul process is just how quickly the team has been able to move. We are actively engaged with over 2/3 of the federal acquisition regulations right now. And what we've done so far is work on things like acquisition planning, things like market research, things that are foundational to government acquisition. Where we're going next is we're going to be looking at things like commercial item acquisition. We're going to be looking at small businesses and the important role they play in acquisition. And we're going to be looking more at services. We've already started to look at services a little bit more, but we're going to have a very busy late summer and early fall.
Are there changes that you think have been fairly significant that maybe the community hasn't paid as much attention to as you expected?
Well, not every change that we make is revolutionary, although overall it's definitely a revolutionary FAR overhaul.
Yes.
So there are some things that are quiet, but I think some of the things that we're looking at in terms of emphasizing market research, making acquisition more than just something that's a transactional enterprise, where you are actually looking to do something beyond a tactical level buy, where you're actually looking at the strategy that's going to meet your agency. That's one of the things that we're really trying to drive in with this, as well as changing the culture to get to that business support role that we always want acquisition to play.
Your FAR Council member, Carla Smith-Jackson, was on the show not too long ago. Recently announced she's retiring, but before she did so, she joined me to talk about her piece and NASA's piece of the FAR overhaul. How did you decide who was going to pay attention to what and who was going to work on what when you parceled out the work for the FAR overhaul?
That's a great question, and really some of the FAR lends itself to self-sorting. All the things with major systems acquisitions went to the Department of Defense. A lot of the cost plus work went to the Department of Defense. The science and technology parts went to NASA, and because there's always limited bandwidth, they also help GSA out with some of the commercial item acquisition and some of the foundational things that maybe don't have an obvious home, but it's been a very proactive process, one where each group, even if each group takes the lead, other people in the group always review that work to make sure that the end product is what we want it to be.
Now, you knew a ton about the FAR before you went to GSA. Were there things about the FAR that you've learned personally in this process that either you didn't know or didn't remember that came to mind as this process has played out?
Well, you know, Francis, I've been in this business for a long time, and when you've been in it for a long time, things kind of just seep in and they become normative to you. So I think one of the things that's really brought me up here is the plain language thrust of what we're doing. I, like a lot of people, have gotten into the jargon. I know what a cost plus is. I know what a CPFF and all of the acronyms, but we're trying to get away from that so that it doesn't take 30 some odd years of specialization to understand the rules and get to that plain language part of it.
What is going to be different in the life of a contracting officer after the FAR overhaul than it is today? How will that person be able to do the job better because of the changes that you and your colleagues are implementing?
Well, it should be easier on a couple of different levels, Francis. First of all, there will be significantly fewer rules that govern acquisitions, particularly commercial item acquisitions, and a major thrust of this initiative is to return the government to a preference for commercial item acquisition first before we go and build our own types of solutions. So from that perspective, it should be fewer rules, making the process easier, hopefully attracting more competition from companies that may not have wanted to participate under the old regime. But the other part of it, Francis, is that we really want to embrace risk in the acquisition workforce. That's not really something we've talked a lot about, or if we do, nobody really wants to take risk. But I think risk is essential. We need to have contracting officers use the freedoms that we're going to give them. Use those new tools so that you are driving the desired outcomes. So I think it's hopefully will also be a cultural shift where we get to people who say, it says I can do this and I'm going to do it, and not worry too much about what the rules used to say.
The cultural piece, though, has been difficult in this area for a very long time. I mean, you and I talked not too long ago about the Mythbusters campaign that Dan Gordon implemented. That had to be 10 years ago, 12 years ago, maybe longer.
Right.
And that, I think he would even admit that effort struggled to take hold and change people's minds and change the way people did business. What do you think it will take for folks to understand that they can do the things that they're now going to be able to do?
Well, I think a couple of things. First of all, you have to tell the acquisition community, if you're a senior leader in your agency or a supervisor, that if they make an innovative decision, you're going to support them. And they need to know that you've got their back, so to speak, so that they are encouraged to take that risk. I think right now there's a lot of concern about, what happens if I do this and I mess it up? People are going to come down on me. We need to make that okay. Not everything's going to be perfect. We don't want to waste taxpayer dollars, but we do want to make sure that we're using the freedoms and the flexibilities that we're giving acquisition officials. So I think that's one part of it. I think another part of it is that we need to have a trained acquisition workforce that feels comfortable with these rules, Francis, so that they are not seeing these things for the first time when they're trying to do an acquisition. And that's one of the reasons I've been very happy to see the Federal Acquisition Institute and the Defense Acquisition University being an integrated part of this revolutionary FAR overhaul. It's going to help us get that culture change that makes this successful.
All right, a lot more there that I want to cover, so you stay here and we'll come back in just a moment. You can read more about the FAR overhaul on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. More with Larry Allen when Fed Gov Today with Francis Rose continues in a moment.
trust nobody and verify everything throughout your environment. So that's very, very important to do. And you're verifying, do I have the right security in my environment? Do I have the technical components built in to actually drive security? And a lot of, I'd say, assessments are what I would call feelings-based assessments. So I will, meet with the stakeholder and say, how is security in your environment? How are you doing, right? And they'll tell you how they feel about their security and where it is. We want to change that to more technical focused assessments where you're actually getting under the hood of those systems, under the hood of those environments, and really evaluating the security as it's being completed on that system.
So let me use an example just to kind of make what I just said clearer. So let's use permitting, because right now there's an executive order that was recently released in April around permitting. And so if a permitting officer receives an application, right now, instead of toggling between, say, multiple systems or going to some file cabinet, this is where AI can surface similar past permits. It can summarize the history of those past permits, and it can even recommend next steps based on policy. So what I just described to you isn't the future, it's actually happening now.
Welcome back. The goal of the revolutionary FAR overhaul the federal government's undertaking is, quote, faster acquisitions, greater competition, and better results. That's according to language on acquisition.gov. Larry Allen of GSA is back to continue the discussion. We talked a little bit during the break, Larry, about the fact that the FAR overhaul is not happening in a vacuum. It's not off to the side. It's integrated into what's happening with OneGov. It's integrated into what's happening with transactional data reporting and a lot of other pieces of what's going on. How does the overhaul fit into all of the things that the agency is doing regarding acquisition?
Well, you're exactly right, Francis. The revolutionary FAR overhaul is the macro level undertaking to get rid of regulations and right-size the rules, enhance competition, while still making sure that we're protecting taxpayer dollars and bringing accountability and transparency into the acquisition process. So I don't want anybody to think we're creating the wild, wild west out here, but it is integrated in, and it has lots of parts. One part is certainly going to be the agency supplemental acquisition rules, and if you look at GSA, that's going to be our general services acquisition regulations, part of which, as you alluded to, manages the multiple award schedules program, which is an over $50 billion a year commercial item acquisition program. And we're seeing that spur changes. Mm-hmm. You mentioned transactional data reporting. That has been one of two lanes that contractors can use to obtain a schedule contract, the other being the traditional lane with the price reductions clause. Well, Francis, what we're doing at GSA is getting rid of the price reductions clause essentially by expanding transactional data reporting out across the program. We're already well underway with that. The next batch is going to be complex services that we shift over to the transactional data reporting format. But as we do that, it's going to be data that industry provides and the market research that determines pricing on the schedules program, and not the price reductions clause, which has really outlived its usefulness in a marketplace that has dynamic pricing like the commercial market does today.
And TDR, I think, is in an interesting spot. I had Irv Kohler, former GSA guy, on the Fed Gov Today podcast recently, and he said TDR has really the agency's hit a critical mass where the data has gotten really good, and there's enough of it now that COs can really use it to make decisions and see what the right price for things really is now.
Well, that's right, Francis. TDR has now been in place for a number of years, I think at least 7 or 8 years. Mm-hmm. So we've had time to gather data. We've had the time to increase the amount of data that we collect as GSA, not just because we want to load industry up, but because that type of information is useful. It helps us understand the markets that we're doing business in better, helps us negotiate for fair and reasonable pricing, and it really has become something that is very useful, and it will have some journey ahead of us when we get into exceptionally complex services, but our team has said they're up to the challenge, and my office will certainly be there to support them in that, so looking forward to it.
I want to go back to the overhaul itself. What's the timeline look like, in your view, to finish the work that you've started on the FAR overhaul? And will there be a point where you go, okay, it's done, or is it going to continue to be kind of a living document where you will make changes as you get feedback from industry, you get feedback from the agencies, your agency customers, from other folks inside GSA and so on?
Francis, the idea is to make this more of a living document. I don't know that we'll ever be done with rewriting the FAR. Things change, the market changes, external market forces put pressure on the government market. So I don't know that we're ever going to have a static FAR. I don't think we ever have had a static FAR. But I do think you're going to see us in phases. The first phase is going to be coming to an end in a couple of months. And that's been one where we have issued deviations. So we bring the impact directly into the acquisition marketplace today. And then when we go through and we're completed with phase one, then we absolutely are going to shift gears and go out for full rulemaking, comment. We welcome people's comments already. We've gotten a significant amount of comments on acquisition.gov, and I would encourage people to share their thoughts with us on what we should be doing. But we will go out for formal rulemaking. There will be at least one or two more phases to this process. We want to make sure that we are creating an acquisition system that works well and can stand the test of time.
What's a good comment? I imagine this is great or this stinks isn't helpful. What's helpful to you and your colleagues when someone submits a comment? What makes you go, this is really helpful and this is something we should consider incorporating?
Well, I think when you look at what we're doing in the revolutionary FAR overhaul, we're looking for ideas. So, right, don't tell us what you don't, just don't tell us what you don't like. Give us some, for instances, about how to make it better. Or do we need this anymore? If not, what's the case for eliminating a particular rule or regulation? We're all in favor of looking at eliminating rules and regulations right now. So when you comment, make sure you're giving us the not this way, but that way, or have you thought about this? And, this is an example of where something in public acquisition has worked well, maybe at the state or local or even international government level. There's no end of good ideas that we can look at, but we need people to share in this process.
The FAR has gotten to what it has gotten to over the period of however many years it's existed. Is there something that you and your colleagues can do to prevent the, I guess creep is the best word to describe how it's grown over time, or is that just the nature of things with something that is a living document?
Well, I think to a certain extent it is going to be the living nature of things, because as much as we at the FAR Council want to keep an eye on acquisition rules and regulations, and we do want to do that, we also have Congress and the White House and others who definitely have executive orders come from the White House that will impact acquisition. We'll have legislation from Congress that inevitably impacts acquisition in different ways. So I think we can anticipate that will continue, and it will continue to mold what the FAR looks like going forward. But in terms of non-statutory or non-EO driven accreted levels, Francis, that's something we'd really like to prevent from happening.
All right, we have about 30 seconds left. I went back and checked in the anticipation of this conversation. My first interview with you was in 2008 talking about all the same stuff. And you have said over the years, basically all of the things that you advise GSA to do, all of the things that you're talking about now. What's that like to sit inside the building now and see the things that you've advocated for to make contracting better starting to come to fruition?
Well, that's one of the things that really brought me into GSA, is the opportunity to drive change. I've been in this business for a while, and this was an opportunity to really either put up or shut up. And you know me, Francis, I wasn't going to shut up.
No, that's true.
So this is a really terrific opportunity for me to have the impact that we want to have and get some important work done, hopefully save the taxpayers some money, reduce government overhead, and create a more efficient acquisition process.
It's great to have you here, Larry. Thanks for joining me
Thanks,
today.
Francis.
You can read more about the FAR overhaul on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. The Intelligence Community Efficiency and Effectiveness Act of 2025 will reshape the size and mission of the Office of the Director of National Intelligence if Congress passes it and President Trump signs it. John Sherman, the former Chief Information Officer at ODNI and the Defense Department, will tell you what he likes about the reorg and what he's wary of on the Fed Gov Today podcast. You can find that show and all of our podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your shows. And you can always find it on demand at fedgovtoday.com. FedGov Today continues in a moment. Long time ago, a data practitioner in government told me, Mike, that there are 3 C's and an S that he observed to think about data in government. And I wonder if they still apply in the OSINT community today. Collection, collation, and curation are the 3 C's, and storage is the S. Are those the things that OSINT practitioners are thinking about primarily? Is that the right kind of
I think that trajectory still holds today. I think there's a fair amount of tradecraft that goes in on the analytics side. If there was one category or element that we've seen added to that mix, it's probably the tradecraft of how to pull the data and run the right analytics to glean the right results and insights, and have those insights really feed that OODA loop, so to speak, of decision making overall.
Welcome back. In today's event spotlight, the 16th annual Billington Cybersecurity Summit's less than a month away now. Cybersecurity leaders from the military, the intelligence community, and civilian agencies will be at the Washington Convention Center September 9th through 12th. The lineup already includes almost every major name in the federal cyber community. You can see the lineup for yourself and register at fedgovtoday.com. FedGov Today TV returns next Sunday morning with the new commander of the Naval Research Lab, Captain Randy Cruz, and the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency's Associate Director, Trey Treadwell. I'm Francis Rose. I'll see you then. Thanks for watching. Have a great week.